Hey, everyone out there in Erupts World. Welcome back to another show with me, your host, Victoria Levert. And tonight, I am joined by founder of Patriotic Hearts and U.S. veteran advocate. And you know what? Cut just the U.S., just a veteran advocate all the way around since 1970, Mr. Mark Baird. Now, today we're going to be jumping into tackling the ongoing issues facing our U.S. veterans. Mark, are you ready to get into this?
Well, thank you so much, Victoria, for having me on, and particularly for the opportunity to speak to your audience, which I know is largely the younger audience, younger than I am. And I thank you for this opportunity to be able to explain a little bit about, you know, the struggles and the stress of U.S. veterans, and perhaps help people better understand and appreciate their sacrifices.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and get this show on the road. And Mark, thanks for joining us. So, I did a little bit of research, Mark, and I found some stats that kind of blew my mind. Those stats show that of every 1,000 veterans, 21 out of every 1,000 are living on the streets. Studies also show that 1.4 million veterans as of 2021 are at risk of homelessness in the United States. Now, with that being said, of course, as we all know, there are several factors that can lead into homelessness within veterans. Some of those factors being things like employment, mental illness, healthcare, cost of living, etc. And you know what, Mark? That's what you're here to help us understand today, is how all of these different factors affect so many U.S. veterans every single day. Now, before we get off deep into those things, I just want to ask you, Mark, what is your history and background with the military?
Well, I got drafted to go to Vietnam in 1968. Uh, I didn't believe in that war, but there is a sense of duty that when your country calls, it's not a question of whether you agree with it or not. You do it because you're a citizen and the government has called you to serve. And so I joined the United States Marine Corps, and uh, they discovered some medical issues, and I wasn't allowed to serve. And strangely, in 1976, they asked me to join and become an officer.
Oh, wow.
But then they found my medical records, and I didn't get to join again. But anyway, because I couldn't join, I decided I would serve the guys that did, because they were serving in my place, and I felt an obligation to do something for them. And so I started by employing them. I had a janitorial business, and I would employ the Marines. We had 3 Marine bases around me, and I would employ them. I got to know them, and I got to meet a lot of guys that had been to Vietnam, and it really broke my heart. So many of them were struggling with the experiences in combat that they had witnessed, and they were young 19, 18, 20-year-old boys, and my heart broke. And I'm a Christian, and at that time I was wondering where I was going to pastor, and I just decided that for the rest of my life I devote myself to serving U.S. veterans and their families.
Oh, wow. That is such an interesting life journey that kind of brought you full circle with your Christianity, your pastoring, and giving back to the veterans who served in your place, as you'd like to say. What an interesting story you have there, Mark. But looking back over, you've experienced hands-on veterans from all sorts of walks of life and age brackets, even some of your close friends serving in the Vietnam War. With that being said, when it comes to veterans, Mark, why do veterans have such a hard time transitioning back to civilian life?
Well, in life, particularly in the world economy we've experienced for the last several decades, everyone has a hard time.
Mhm.
I would say the vast majority of Americans worry at the end of every month how much money they're going to make, and veterans are just part of that. So, a certain percentage, they're just experiencing what everyone else experiences. But another thing that makes it a little bit more difficult for them is the military life is extremely structured. I mean, you wake up when you're told to wake up. You go to sleep when you're told to go to sleep. You eat when you're told to eat. You know, when you go into the civilian world after being in the military for so many years under such extreme structure and standard operating procedures, everything seems chaotic. And so it's really hard for them to adjust, and particularly when they get a job with a civilian business that runs on civilian ways, it's very confusing and disturbing to them. And so the average veteran will actually take about 3 jobs before he actually finds a place where he can actually fit in. It's
Oh,
really
wow.
best that companies have a veteran program so the veterans that they hire get to work with other veterans and have those veterans acclimate them into the civilian culture of that business.
Wow, now that's such an interesting point that you just brought up that it takes the average veteran to go through about 3 civilian jobs before they find their perfect fit. Now, why do you think that is, Mark? Do you believe that companies are veteran friendly?
Well, there are a lot of veteran friendly companies because there's so much that a veteran has to offer. I mean, they've been trained to do things properly, and they know how to follow orders, and they know how to do things according to standard operating procedures. They know how to work with a team in order to accomplish the mission, and they have faced extremely difficult situations in which the mission seemed impossible and even life threatening, and yet have been able to successfully fulfill their missions. And so you're not going to find too many civilian employees who've had that kind of hardcore experience as a United States veteran.
So, with that being said, you would say that that difficulty, that going through 3 different jobs before finding the right fit for veterans, it doesn't so much fall on the companies; it falls more so into structure. Correct?
Well, it's just society itself. I mean,
Mm.
the civilian culture and society is so radically different from that of the military. It's like going to a foreign planet. And they go into the military at such an impressionable age. You're not fully formed as a human being really when you're 18 years old. You're trying to discover who you are. The military forms that person, and you become that person in the military. And so when you get out of the military, you kind of lose your identity. Who am I now? I'm not in the military. And so a lot of people, when they're 24, 26 years old, they're getting out of college, they form that identity. They have a real strong sense of purpose and where they're going in life. You take someone who's been in the military since he was 18 years old, you get him out of the military when he's 26, he's lost. Now, who am I? What am I supposed to do?
Wow, thank you for bringing up that point. I never really took into account just how serious something like that could be. These veterans, they usually have entered the military at 18 or 20 or 19, something very, very young, and that is their life. That's what they know. And so if they get put out into a world that really is kind of foreign to them, it's a loss of identity. Wow, that's a great point. Thank you
And
for that,
it's
Mark.
an identity that they hold on to for the rest of their lives. It's hard to meet a veteran who doesn't say that the greatest experience of his life was being in the military. I mean, it's the sense of unity and teamwork and purpose and mission and accomplishment and growing and maturing and learning that happens at such an important part of their lives that for the rest of their lives there's a unity and a camaraderie and a brotherhood among veterans unlike anything else I've ever witnessed in my life.
Wow, thank you for giving us that insight. So, while I was doing my research for our show in preparation, I also found some other staggering statistics out here in the ethos, the internet world. And, our good old friend Google let me know that the unemployment rate of veterans rose to 6.3% in November of 2020. Now, that 6.3% translates to about 552,000 veterans searching for work out of roughly 8.7 million working age veterans who are able to work. And with that being said, 6.3% to some might not seem too large of a number, but it kind of is. Now, with that being said, Mark, let me know, do veterans struggle finding and keeping employment after working in the military?
Well, yeah, that's the hardest thing. That's the biggest challenge. You get out of the military, the biggest challenge is how am I going to support my family? And that's primarily what I've always focused on throughout my entire life. If imagine if someone comes home from war and they've seen killing, and they've seen their friends die, and they've seen things that an 18 no one should ever witness, let alone an 18. And so it's changed his mind, the chemistry of his mind, the wiring of his mind. And so he has trauma. He has panic attacks. He has nightmares. He has sweats. He experiences a lot of things that he's going to carry with for the rest of his life. And so the best thing that I can do for this guy is to remove the stress from his life, remove as much anxiety as I possibly can, and create as much stability in his life as possible. And so by giving him sustainable employment as soon as possible, so he doesn't have to worry at the end of every month, can I support my family? Can I pay the bills? Can I pay the rent? Can I feed my kids? Can I do that? Take that off his shoulders. Now he's able to acclimate a lot more easily and a lot more successfully into society. He's able to deal with issues that he may be dealing with the rest of his life because of his military experience. It's much better to deal with them once you have that stability under your feet. So employment has been my primary focus. Of course, getting a full-time job is a great thing to do. I also think it's very important for veterans to consider entrepreneurism, and so I have a program to make them their own business owners. There's so much experience they have in the military that applies to business ownership and leadership, so that's great. And then also, we've provided a unique one-day job board, a day-by-day job board that residents can use all across the country. Just look around your house, your yard, and find some chores that you would really like to have done and post it on hirepatriots.com, H-I-R-E, hirepatriots.com. And local veteran, Marine, Sailor, Army, Air Force, Ghosties, whatever, whenever they need to pick up some extra money or their spouses need to pick up some extra money, they can go to the job board every day and just click on a job and call the people up and say, yeah, I can help paint your bedroom. And they'll say, come on over, and they pay that veteran, and the veteran goes home with money in their pocket.
So hirepatriots.com also helps the spouses of veterans as well find employment locally.
Such a hard job. I mean, military spouses need so much more appreciation and honor than we give them. The military life is so difficult, particularly for mothers with children, and the husband quite often. Sometimes, it's the other way around, but primarily, it's that way. Having to take care of a family and the breadwinner is away for 6 months, a year at a time, sometimes 18 months at a time. He comes back home and he wants to be the boss of the family again. And, he hasn't been there for 18 months. He's the boss. We know how to run things, and things get jumbled. That's the reason why we also hold military marriage retreats every year, because there's a 90% divorce rate with combat veterans. And so, they've experienced so much. They've suffered so much. They've sacrificed so much. It just seems so ridiculous that they come home and they lose their wives and their children.
Wow, that's another adverse side effect to coming home from a war or even having a military life that most people, like I said, aren't aware of, Mark, is how that affects families, and how trying to recover from a war or being in the military can affect your home life, or just being in the military can affect your home life, and the effect that it has on spouses. Wow. So I'm happy that you're offering resources for both our veterans and their spouses. That's great. And retreats as well. This sounds like an amazing resource for our veterans to use. So thank you for that. Now let's go ahead and let's get further into our show. Another study that I was reading up on found that around 11 to 20 out of every 100 veterans suffer from PTSD. So, taking into PTSD, Mark, I know that you have a little bit of a personal tie into that. Can you just let us know how PTSD can affect transitioning from military to civilian life for veterans?
Well, the number is far higher than that.
Okay.
Because most veterans, there's a certain male machismo in the military, and no one ever wants to admit that their injury, even though they might have lost a leg or an arm, bothers them. They're still going to say, I'm still gung-ho, I'm going back in the military. So a lot of guys do suffer the effects of combat trauma, and No, they never tell anybody about it. I'm a child of my father, my grandfather, my uncles all fought in World War II and the Korean War, and no one ever talked about it. I'm certain a lot of them had PTSD, but I never. The only time I heard them talk about it was on Thanksgiving and Christmas, and they'd get drunk. You know, otherwise they kept it to themselves, and so that still is really true for the military. So there's a lot more who suffer from combat trauma than the statistics will show. But again, it's that ripe early age where they experience explosions and death and horrors beyond that most people can possibly imagine, and those things get embedded in the memory and haunt them for the rest of their lives. They lose loved ones. I mean, you make friendships in the military unlike any other place in the world, and when you lose those buddies, you never get over.
Wow. Wow. So with that being said, you've already given us a little bit of an insight on what your website, higherpatriots.com, does. Why don't you let us know a little bit about Patriotic Hearts? What is Patriotic Hearts all about?
Well, I've been serving veterans for about 30 years, just as a pastor for free, just helping people. And so when I moved to Oceanside next to Camp Pendleton, a Marine knocked on my door, and he was really in dire financial situation. And I said, well, I'm going to come up with something to help you out. And so I created a website called HireMarines.com where residents could just post jobs and help out the Marines. And so that really helped a lot. But again, I was paying for that. Nobody was helping me. I wasn't a nonprofit or anything. But then as other programs started happening, I was holding job fairs on the bases. I was holding marriage retreats. I was teaching them how to start their own business. I couldn't financially support myself anymore. And so we had to become a nonprofit, a 501c3. So we became patriotichearts.org. And now we have, we have several programs underneath there that I've mentioned. The primary way that we support ourselves is through a car donation to veterans program, car donation to veterans.com. And there's a 1-888-433-6202 number that people can call anywhere in the United States. And if they have an unwanted vehicle, we'll pick it up and we'll give them a donation receipt for the value of their thing. And then we'll use that vehicle to help veterans. And so really the title of that program is Helping America's Heroes.
You know what? I really like that. That's very innovative and super, super clever for you to come up with that way of helping our veterans. I love it. It's super fun. Now, with that being said, what type of success have you seen with helping veterans through your organization?
Well, there's so many great organizations, and we're just one out of so many. I think there's so many Americans that are called just almost at birth to be helpers, to be givers. Obviously, you are. That's what it's all about. Obviously, you just have a sense within your heart that I really want to spend my life helping other people. And so some of them are called to help veterans, some children, whatever, and so we're all kind of working together. So I'm just doing my part. But I've been fortunate enough to have some success. I've worked hard at this about 15 hours a day for the last 20 years. And, we've gotten awards from a couple of presidents, from Congress. The Pentagon made a video about us. We've been on all the major TV stations, radio stations, newspapers, given a lot of talks like this, stuff like that. And, that one-day job program, though, if I could just mention this, I provide the website and the job board to every community in America for free. We host it. We manage it. They don't have to spend a cent. And we'll help them market it as well. And that's really been the most successful program in my mind, because it allows veterans all over the country, whether they have full-time employment or not, they may still be struggling at the end of every month, to just pick up, 4 or 5 extra jobs every month and earn an extra $1,000 a month to help make ends meet. And it helps people in the military when they're away from home to meet people within the community who care about them and to form those familiar relationships that are very important to them. So that's the one dearest to my heart, is our one-day jobs program. But of course, we offer full-time jobs on our website, and as I say, marriage retreats. And I have a program called U.S. Military Clean. I've made my fortune in my life by creating janitorial businesses. And so I trained them how to start their own janitorial business. I provide their equipment, their certifications, insurance, everything. So that within a week, they can immediately start making money.
Wow, amazing. I love that. It's so, like I said, just very innovative concepts here. So, hats off to you, Mark, for being the brain behind such amazing organizations,
Well,
websites,
wait,
and
wait, wait,
resources.
wait. When you say when I'm the brain behind it, it's very important to mention my wife, Tori,
Okay. Shout out
because
to Tori.
none of this would have been possible without my wife, Tori Baird.
Aww.
She keeps me together and keeps me focused and makes things happen.
Okay, I love it. So you and Tori putting your brains together and making such amazing websites, organizations, and resources for veterans is truly ahead of your time. So hats off to both Tori and Mark on that set of news. So you know, when I think about veterans, especially with some of the stats that I pulled and I was looking at homelessness rates and unemployment rates, I asked myself, what could I do to help a veteran? I see signs all the time living here in Los Angeles where I see veterans holding up signs that are like, I'm a veteran, but I'm homeless. Please give me money for food, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure all of us have seen that at some point in our life. And so my question now is, Mark, what can the public do to help veterans?
Well, the best thing that I can say, like a homeless veteran, you know, if he had a 1-day job board functioning in that community, make enough money to support himself and his family because he could pick up 2 or 3 jobs a day just by going to that job. And so what I would say is that if you know of anyone or if you have an unwanted car or truck, to donate it to car donation to veterans, because that will enable us to spread this program across the country into every community that has military members and veterans in it, which is just about every community in America. And that gives the communities a way to thank their veterans, to thank their military families in a very practical way.
I like that, sharing resources with our veterans. I like that, Mark. So thanks for that bit of advice. Now, when it comes to the VA and the government with our veterans, do you personally feel that the VA and the government are doing enough to help the veterans?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I
Okay,
know that there's a
cool.
lot of criticism sometimes that people have, and I guess there are certain managers, there's certain VAs that don't do a good job. I mean, that's going to happen when you have so many. I mean, it's a massive, massive department with, it must be hundreds of thousands of employees. There's going to be some bad seeds, but the government really, the GI Bill, there are so many great benefits available to veterans, and the VA provides just every service you could possibly think of, and the people who work there do so because they love veterans. And so it's a great. I mean, no other country in the world has a better place for their veterans to go to than our United States VA system. It's a wonderful system.
So we've heard it from Mark, his stance on the VA. Thank you for that. Now, Mark, before we close out our show, I want to ask you, if you have any advice for our veterans that might be watching our show live right now, if you could offer a veteran any tip of advice for being successful in the civilian world, what would you say to them?
Well, there's patriotic hearts. They can always reach out to me. But there's hundreds, if not thousands or tens of thousands of other patriotic military supporting nonprofits and churches and organizations and there's even through the government, the Labor Department, through their America Career Centers. There's so many resources available besides just going to a VA resource center. Take advantage of those things. I know there's a machismo among veterans. I can do this by myself. I don't need any help. But that's not true in the military, because in the military you never do anything by yourself. You only accomplish things with a team of other people. And so there is a team available for you veterans. So many of us love you and care for you that there's no reason for you to suffer and be alone or feel like no one cares about you. Millions of us do. And so reach out. Don't be afraid to do that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for those Amazing words, Mark. Now, for our veterans that might be watching live, take those tips from Mark. Use resources. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And for those of us who see our veterans on the streets, if you're watching this show right now, you too have now been educated on several different resources that could help any veteran in need. So don't be afraid to share those with your veterans every single day. Now, I want to say thank you so much, Mark, for having this discussion with me. You've taught me so much. I feel a little bit more educated on the topic of our veterans, and I'm sure our eruptors watching right now do as well. To my eruptors, this is the final show of the night, but make sure to tune in tomorrow morning for, of course, another wake-up call with Aria and Lauren LaBruna. And stay tuned. Oh, I'm sorry. Tomorrow's Saturday. I'm sorry. You guys, it's the weekend. It's Friday. Where's my head? I'm just automatically robot here, programmed. But you know what? It's the weekend. It's Friday. So you know what, you guys? Go out and have an amazing Friday. Relax, enjoy your time, and make sure to tune in tomorrow as well for some shows with Sydney and Corrine. How about that? This is Victoria Levert signing off with Erupts. I will see you all on Monday. Mark, thanks so much for joining us. Have an awesome rest of your night.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.